Training camp continues on for the Indianapolis Colts at Grand Park in Westfield. So, which stories are taking over? Can some of the developments that have happened, especially this week, shape the team moving forward? And what do you, the fans, think of Colts training camp so far? Well, let's talk about it. Welcome to the Horseshoe Huddle Podcast, as always, presented by Indianapolis Colts on SI.com. My name is Drake Wally, co-host of the show, co-deputy editor of the site. Noah Gebert over here, fellow co-host of the show and analyst for the site. You know what, Noah? We are so unbelievably close to Colts preseason football that it's insane. And there's actually preseason football tonight. I know that everyone's been starving to watch something, as far as NFL football. But how you doing, man? We've actually got some good stuff, some bad stuff to talk about.
Yeah, for sure.
But yeah, man, I'm excited. How you doing, pal?
Yeah, I'm doing well, man. Excited because we're in the thick of it now. Everything's just gearing up. There's news coming out every day. They're out to practices, something new's happening. Yeah, like you mentioned, some of it good, some of it not so good. But yeah, we're here to hit on all of it, and we're getting a little bit closer to. I know you're going to be out at training camp in a couple days, viewing that, and then we got the Colts out in Baltimore for a joint practice over there before their preseason game. So we've got some time. Where we're not going to get as close up of a view of them because they're not going to be over here in Westfield anymore, but we're still going to be getting news coming in, getting to see some valuable reps with that joint practice coming up. So yeah, I'm excited about what's ahead and excited to talk about what's happened so far.
Yeah, and as people get in here, it's been, of course, a training camp that all eyes have been on really the entire team. It looks completely different than it did last year, and there's a lot of things to talk about, especially that happened this week. But Sean Conkright, nice to see you, pal. Tony, what's up, guys? Teresa, Paul, and then we've got Marquise. Huddle in the house. Drake, Noah, you guys always have great content and always enjoy watching you guys. Colts for life. You're awesome. And then we've got John Gilbert. So everybody, thank you so much for tuning in here. But yeah, we'll go ahead and just kind of give an overview. So last week, it was all about, the struggles of both quarterbacks, Daniel Jones, Anthony Richardson. Everyone was talking about Justin Wally. How does Charvarius Ward? Oh yeah. That could be another talking point. But, just over the small sample of practices that we've seen, that we've looked over, what are your thoughts on just the overall feel? Because it does feel like there's a different vibe around this team, and it really does feel like a team that doesn't want to win 8 or 9 games anymore.
Yeah, and it feels a little bit more serious as we go on. I think a lot of expectations were being hedged based on fans and the media because of the quarterback situation that the Colts have going on. Just cautious optimism, I think, is the most generous way you could say it for the fan base and the media between these two quarterbacks and Anthony Richardson and Daniel Jones. But and it kind of started out that way, where we were seeing some weak performances from both of them. The good days were, I guess, good for both of them. The bad days were bad for both of them. So you didn't really know what to think. Nobody's really taking a lead or a stranglehold on this quarterback position. Then we get a few practices in, some things start rolling in, and they're chaining some good days together. Albeit still, it seems like maybe Anthony Richardson has a slight lead on that quarterback competition, but I think both of them have really stepped up their game, and the passing offense as a whole is running up a little bit more smoothly, less drops from the pass catchers. So yeah, I think as we get into it and things start ramping up, you start to feel a little bit better. I think that's natural when you're going in through training camp. Obviously, you're going to see a lot of mistakes early, but yeah, hopefully they get these things polished up. We go into this next week here, the Baltimore game, and you really start to get a feel for what this team could be.
Yeah, and I think that it's really encouraging because, I remember, because I write so many pieces, I sometimes forget what I have wrote, but I think I covered one where it talked about just how much of the talent on this team is like under 25 years old.
Yeah.
A lot of young guys, like we mentioned, we might get into it later, but you've got a rookie like Justin Wally, who is out there absolutely lighting the practice field on fire. You got guys, on the offensive side that guys like Bortolini, guys like Gonsalves that are starting to, come into their own, even though Bortolini is in a competition with Danny Pinter. So there's a lot to talk about, man. And what we'll do is we'll just we'll create a nice pace here because there's a lot of news that happened, not just with training camp, but also outside of training camp. So we'll just dive into the very first one that really sticks out. And I remember, I think it was the 29th. It was like 9 p.m., 9:30 p.m. I was finishing up a piece, preparing it for the morning. And I remember saying, oh my gosh, there it finally was. And that was, they finally gave Bernhard Raimann a contract extension. Now, Noah, on Monday, we were talking about how they weren't on the same page.
Yeah.
Right. Like, and I think it just proves, man, that, I think it was Chris Ballard or maybe it was Pat McAfee that said everybody's lying. Right. It's not even that they were lying. It's that could have been kind of like you mentioned, the words of his agent trying to push leverage, to get his client the best deal. So the deal was 4 years, $100 million, makes him a top 10 paid tackle, which he deserves. 60 million of that is guaranteed. So that's an outrageous amount. Tell me a little bit about not just what you think of the money they're giving him, but the player, because he's just gotten better ever since getting thrown into the fray his rookie year.
Yeah. And it's funny how fast things moved when we were talking about the show on Monday, how it just come out. The agents telling Bernhard Raimann they're not close. That's what he relays to the media. And then a few days later, it's signed, sealed, and delivered. Yeah, you mentioned finally they get it done. I was kind of prepared to sit in this for the long haul and say maybe this even bleeds into weeks 1, 2 of the regular season. But I did think it would get done. I didn't really have any doubts that was going to be something that the Colts were going to prioritize and Bernhard Raimann was going to be willing to do. I thought that was just a smart business from Chris Ballard, from the Ursays, and just trying to get this done, because no matter how you feel about what the regime may look like next year, if you're getting a new head coach, if you're getting a new GM, if you're getting a new quarterback, Bernhard Raimann, somebody you want to have on your team. And yeah, just good to get him locked up. Honestly, it was the money, I think, is something that's going to look better and better as time goes on. I think that number is kind of shocking just because the Colts don't have a ton of players on their roster that are making that much money. And that's kind of what you get when you're paying a premier player at a premier position like left tackle. You're going to see top end of the market, but even what they gave him isn't, like you mentioned, top 10 in tackle, but he's not the highest paid offensive lineman in NFL history. Like Rashawn Slater just got signed. And maybe that was the domino that the Colts were waiting to fall. Maybe that's the domino that Bernhard Raimann's agent and his team were looking to fall, so they could get really a gauge on what the value is at that exact moment, and kind of go from there. And I think that domino fell, and then very quickly the terms came into place. So really good to see the Colts lock up their left tackle of the future. I know he was a little bit of an older rookie coming in, so he's not, like you mentioned, that talent under 25 on the team. I think he'll be 28 at some point this season. So he's a little bit on the older side in terms of how much experience he has within the league. But I mean, a 28-year-old left tackle who's in his prime and playing like a top 10 tackle in the NFL, you're going to want to lock that up for as long as you can.
Yeah. And, something that really stands out, and I know that I kind of mentioned this, but when I did the breaking news piece on his contract and when they extended him, it's really interesting because you can look directly at the Pro Football Focus metrics. And, I actually had this. He started his career shaky when thrust with the starting role in 2022 with, the team around him was disgusting. They were awful. But the thing is, he was one of the few bright spots when they lost to the Texans and they got that 4th overall pick. And so you really had a lot of hope. But man, the Pro Football Focus, the 3 prominent grades really stand out. So in 2023, his overall offensive grade was 82.7. His pass blocking was 81.3, and his run blocking was 74.6. Fast track to last year, overall grade was 85.1. His pass blocking was 82.0, and his run blocking jumped almost 6 points. I mean, the guy isn't just a pass blocker. All of us associate left tackle with pass blocking, of course, because it's the blind side unless it's Tua. But I mean, the guy can also run block and he can provide that impact. So, I mean, tell me if I'm wrong, but you're basically looking at the second best offensive lineman on the Colts behind definitely Quentin Nelson.
Yeah, yeah. I think at some point within this contract, we're probably going to be having that discussion of who is the best offensive lineman in the Colts between Quentin Nelson and Bernhard Raimann, and what a good problem to have those two lined up right beside each other. You mentioned Raimann being more than just a pass blocker. I think of the Colts' explosive runs last year, I think a third of them was right in that gap in between Bernhard Raimann and Quentin Nelson running there. So, I mean, they're a dominant duo in the run game when they're lined up together like that. And yeah, also just that solidity in the passing game that you need when you're trying to, one, develop this young quarterback or throw in a quarterback in Daniel Jones who really needs to take the next step in his career, regardless of who you're throwing in there. I think you feel a little bit better at night when you've got Bernhard Raimann in the lineup.
Yeah, and it gets you excited because, I mean, again, all he's done since getting thrown in there as a rookie and looking awful is just improve. And, you know, at the end of he didn't really have a lot of experience at Central Michigan with the Chippewas. So, but at the end of his college run, he looked good. So the Colts were taking a shot on that upside, not the on-field experience. And I will say this, I think Zach Hicks also said it. This has to be one of Chris Ballard's best picks. I mean, it absolutely does. You got the guy 77th overall, and now he's a top 10 paid tackle. So I think Chris Ballard can give himself the old pat on the back in this case. He's been able to do that, find some diamonds in the rough, and you know, perhaps Justin Wally's the next one. So we'll have to see. But yeah, we got oh my goodness, 141 JM. Good morning from Perth, Western Australia. Pumped for this upcoming season. It always gets us so pumped when we get viewers from across the pond or from Australia. We've actually had multiple viewers from Australia. So thank you so much for joining. It's always really cool. And the fact that you're spending your morning watching us is even more encouraging.
Yeah, and Colts are starting their night practice here in about 45 minutes, which is a night scrimmage under the lights. But yeah, I guess in terms of if you're in Australia, that's a very early morning practice for them. So
yeah. Now I will say that that the nighttime practices, I'll be at a 4:00 one. I'm 2.5 hours away from the complex. I'm kind of excited. I'm not doing an evening one for sure. So, but then we got Truett throwing down a $3 super sticker. Thank you so much, Truett. You've been one of the most loyal listeners. All of you in the chat are absolutely incredible people. Thank you so much, Truett, for that donation. And then top 10 guy, glad they locked him in. You're not wrong, Paul. I think that we all were saying that if you let this guy test free agency, the Colts wouldn't have gotten him on a 4-year, $100 million deal. That would have been eclipsing $30 million a year. So it's good. Good.
I think talented guy overall. His game's growing, and it has been growing over the last 3 years. And another big thing that I don't think people talk about enough is just his availability for the team. And he's played an average of 15 games over his first 3 seasons in the NFL. So he's only missing round 2 a game, which I mean, you don't want to miss any, but if you have to miss some, you want to keep that number as low as possible. And throughout his career at this point, Bernhard Raimann's been doing a pretty good job of that. So yeah, I think when the best ability is availability, and then on top of that, he has the second and third and fourth best abilities as well. I think that's just something you feel a no-brainer if getting him locked up.
Yeah. So it's gonna be a lot of fun to see what Raimann can continue to do, but you just hope that the contract doesn't make his play dip, because we have seen in the past when guys get paid, kind of dips a little bit. And I don't even know if they can help it. I think it might be a natural comfort thing, but we'll see with Bernhard Raimann. This next one really makes me sad because we were talking about this room. I remember we did our mock draft. I'll never forget this. And we didn't even pick. Me and Noah it created utter pandemonium, right? Just kidding. But it was kind of a wild mock draft because we took the first 2 rounds to select cornerbacks. I think we went Will Johnson and Siobhan Ravel. You know, once you get Charvarius Ward in there, we did another mock draft. Okay, so, and it looked a whole lot different, I'll tell you that. But this one hurts. It's Jalen Jones goes down with a hamstring injury, and there's 2 factors to an injury that really make it stand out. Number one is that when it's lower extremity, never good, because in the NFL, especially as a cornerback, you're backpedaling, you're using those, the calves and the under the, like below the knee. It's a lot of just piston-like movement. But he also didn't get touched when he had that injury. Wasn't able to get up. He got carted off the field. It hasn't been revealed just yet, the severity of it. But we'll just start with Jalen Jones, man. I know that you're a huge fan of this kid. He's coming off a great year. He's was going to be relied upon, and he could come back. Who knows? But it doesn't look good. Tell me the impact that this has on what was a very heavy and looked to be incredibly explosive cornerback room.
Yeah, it was a lot different. You mentioned that mock draft that we went into. When we did that mock draft, there was no Charvarius Ward on the roster. There was no Justin Wally on the roster. It was essentially Jalen Jones and Sam Womack and Juju Brents. Those were your outside corners on the roster. So it made sense that we wanted to address that. But still, that being said, I think it's been clear that the Colts have felt pretty strongly about Jalen Jones and Juju Brents both having the talent to start on the outside. Juju Brents continued to get some starter reps, even after dealing with injuries the past 2 seasons here in training camp before this injury to him. Jalen Jones specifically, I think it's both hamstring injuries for both of these guys. The severity you don't know about. Jalen Jones, you mentioned, got carted off the field, which if we were in a regular season game and he got carted off the field, I think that'd be a huge concern. Here in training camp, I feel like they'll bring the card out if it's just for precaution, even if it's not too serious. So obviously you don't want to see the cart. I think if you're in the season, you worry a lot more. But that being said, we don't know how bad this is. The cart could be, you could bring a card out for someone who's going to miss a few days of camp, and you could bring the card out for somebody who's going to miss the entire season. That just really brings the range way up there. We hope it's not that long. I think it's kind of good news. You haven't seen either of them move to the PUP list at this point. But still, I've not enough insider information to know how long these injuries are going to be. I think Justin Wally is really a name to watch. Everybody you mentioned at the start of the show that's a name that everybody was watching and talking about regardless. But now the 2 main competitors that he had for that outside corner starting spot are Jalen Jones and Juju Brents. And really, regardless of how much time they're going to miss, I think no matter how much it is, it's all rolling in Justin Wally's favor. Obviously, you don't want to see a guy win a starting job just by default due to injuries. I think the way things were trending, it looked like the Colts were trying to get Justin Wally on the field regardless, even with Jones and Brents available to them. But yeah, I think this just means more snaps for Justin Wally. You're going to see him take a large chunk, probably not getting as much work inside like he was when he was backing up Kenny Moore. And Kenny Moore was out for a rest day, and they would bring Justin Wally in to back up that nickel spot. But I think he's probably going to get a ton of work on the outside, and they're going to try to keep him outside and get him as comfortable on the outside as possible, preparing for any time that Brents and Jones may miss and may not be available. Especially at this first preseason game, I expect Justin Wally to get a ton of reps with the ones at that outside corner spot. But yeah, in terms of just Jalen Jones' outlook, I think it was kind of up in the air. I went into training camp thinking Jalen Jones was probably the favorite at that outside corner role just because of the way that he's performed in years prior. But that being said, we talked about this a lot in a lot of episodes when Louis Anarumo came in and this new defensive back coaching staff. They're not going to play favorites. They're not going to go based off of what you've done for the Colts in the past. It's going to be, how can you fit this scheme? How can you impact us right now? And they seem to have been favoring Justin Wally, and Jalen Jones didn't have as huge of a lead. So I think you were dealing with a guy who, despite the past strong performances he's had, he was still very much in the midst of battling for a starting job. And this just makes it tougher for him to really lock that down and prove early on, at least to this coaching staff, that he's a good fit for that spot.
Yeah, and Jalen Jones, what a story. I remember when I had first joined at the time it was horseshoehuddle.com, and when I first joined this podcast, the ascension that he had, and I'll never forget, people were losing it when they cut Darius Rush. And why? Well, it's because Jalen Jones was better. And all he's done is work his ass off. And he became a legitimate starting cornerback last year. And he's not the fastest, but he's incredibly physical. and he makes a lot of tackles, and he sticks his nose in there in the run game. I mean, he's a good football player. And so I think that you were really looking at him like, yeah, so Justin Wally, which, by the way, he was already getting starter reps before any injuries started happening in that room. Now you're looking at him like, all right, young buck, let's see what you got, like, so this is a big one. Your only hope is, I love that you pointed out that you're not going to take any chances here and be like, oh, you know what, Jalen Jones, hey, you're fine. Go ahead and get up. It's not a brutal injury. We're just going to help you off the field. No, it's training camp, man. You got guys like DeForest Buckner not even, playing sometimes. Or he didn't play in OTAs and mini camp. So this is a time where you take everything as precaution, with all the caution you can. But the next one is Juju Brents, man. He goes down with another injury. Yeah. And it's like he was showcasing some spark. He was showing in camp why they picked him in the second round. Goes down with another injury. Noah, this is really difficult to say. But in the NFL and as analysts, we have to say this covering this sport. He looks like a guy who just can't stay on the field, man. Yeah. He looks like he's allergic to staying healthy, staying on the field. Tell me a little bit about what this means. And even regardless of the severity of the injury, given the injury history he's already got and only playing 11 out of 34 games, I mean, this looks pretty rough, especially when you got a guy like Justin Wally who is looking like an outright starter.
Yeah, it's interesting how similar these situations are with Jalen Jones and Juju Brents. Both similar injuries to the hamstring, both in similar spots in terms of trying to compete for an outside corner job with a coaching staff that didn't draft them, and they don't really fit the mold of these guys. But also very different when you think about the past and Jalen Jones' injury history and how he's, for the most part, been very healthy and very available to the Colts, and you're not really concerned about a long-term chronic issue of injuries with Jalen Jones. But man, Juju Brents, even if it's a short-term injury, like you mentioned, any time off the field is so much more detrimental, I think, to his long-term future than it would be for a guy like Jalen Jones, who just hasn't missed that time, because it's just accumulating that time off the field. And really, I think he was a little bit further up on the depth chart than I think I anticipated going into training camp when he was getting those reps at outside starting corner with Justin Wally healthy, with Jalen Jones healthy. They were still trying to get him in the mix. So I think it does show that they appreciate the investment that the Colts used on him, and they're willing to see if it's something that can play out. And they understand that he has the talent to be able to play on the outside. But yeah, I mean, we talked about that with Bernhard Raimann, the best ability being availability, and Juju Brents just has none of that, frankly. We talk about Anthony Richardson and his injury history, Jelani Woods and his injury history. Juju Brents very much on that level, if not a tier higher, in terms of not being able to stay on the field, which makes it really rough, especially when you have these other guys. I mean, if this is just like a 3-week injury for Jalen Jones and Juju Brents, and then, I mean, that's just a crowded room there with Jalen Jones, Justin Wally, Charvarius Ward, Juju Brents, Sam Womack, all these guys on the field. I mean, you need to be here taking pretty much every rep. Even if you thought you were high on the depth chart when you came into training camp and you were getting some reps with the ones, you're missing any time, then you're falling down the ladder and you're falling down it quickly. So I worry about the long-term future here with Juju Brents. I'm not sure it's something they're going to just outright cut him for. Just because I feel like my tone shifted on that since training camp started, because when it started, I didn't expect him to be getting those reps with the ones. I thought he was going to have to work a little bit harder to get back into the good graces of the coaching staff and get a few more snaps. But yeah, you're sitting here and you're just hoping that this is as short as possible for especially Juju Brents. I know I'm a big fan of Jalen Jones, and I want him on the field, and I want him to be able to compete for that starting job as well. But man, just for the sake of Juju Brents and his future with the Colts and his career, I hope that it's as short as possible so he can get back to proving the Colts right originally when they selected him in the second round.
Yeah, and Chet has a really good question here. Is Juju even a tradable asset at this point? He's starting to look like a cut candidate. Noah has addressed this in a previous episode. You're not going to get much for him if you trade him.
Yep.
Teams are going to look at him like, yeah, you've got this length, you've got this athleticism, and you've got all this, this and that and that and this. But I mean, you could be literally the best cornerback that the NFL has seen in its history as a league. And if you play less than 33% of your games and then you get hurt in training camp, teams aren't going to look at you like you're an asset. Okay. They'll pick you up off the scrap heap. Sure. At that point, you're a dart throw, which that's cheap. Okay. But no, I hate to say it, but if the Colts did trade Juju Brents, man, they'd probably get what do you think, Noah? Like a 6th rounder, maybe?
I mean, yes, 6th, 7th. I think more likely we'd probably be looking in that kind of player swap range at the end of training camp. Like those days or two before you get to those cut down days, you're like, hey, our cornerback room's a little bit heavy. We're probably going to make a difficult decision here. We might as well move one of these guys and get somebody at a position group we don't feel as confident in. Maybe your offensive line depth you're not feeling super great about, so you're willing to trade Juju Brents for someone that you would see going into the season as your 8th or 9th offensive lineman. Maybe that's something that you would look at. But yeah, in terms of draft capital, I don't think you're looking at anything that's going to really make a difference.
Yeah, and it's unfortunate because when you saw him, especially in that rookie year, especially in that Baltimore Ravens game, it really was fun to see him force some turnovers. I think he forced a key fumble in that game. He's like Jalen Jones. He's not the fastest guy, but unlike Jalen Jones, he has the most freakish length wingspan I've ever seen for a cornerback. So if he gets his hands on you in press coverage, good luck. Like, he's a really physical guy. And I know Anarumo favors the fast guys, but I mean, it's really a shame. Paul, this right here, I like to put my apple juice in a mug. So thank you.
Frosted mug for your apple
a frosted mug for my apple juice. I have to keep myself nice and hydrated with some apple juice. So thank you, Paul. And yes, Chet, he was a 2nd-round pick right before Josh Downs in the 3rd round and after Richardson in the 1st. So we'll have to see what transpires with Juju Brents. But, man, if he can't get back on that field or at least show up for the preseason games, that's going to be really rough for him to make a recovery. So this next one is the talk of the town. It's the situation that I am, I'm excited to see in person, but I'm also ready to hear about something else. And maybe I'll, if I get a chance to talk to Anthony or Daniel Jones, I'll, throw some curveballs their way. I don't like the straightforward, easy softball questions, but the quarterback performances are getting better. So last week we saw Richardson struggle. We saw Jones struggle. But now we're starting to see both guys kind of get into a rhythm. You got to think, Jones is adjusting to a brand new scheme, brand new team, new weapons he's never worked with until, OTAs and minicamp. And then you're talking even more so about Richardson, who missed almost all of OTAs and minicamp, coming back from an injury, and he's starting to make connections, and he's starting to take those dump-off throws, those short completions. So encouraging for both of these guys. Tell me a little bit about how this is developing. Shane Steichen was quoted when Jeremy Fowler of ESPN interviewed him. He said, and he's not going to tell you that it's not, but it is significant that he said it's neck and neck battle.
Yeah. And yeah, it's hard for it to not be. I think we mentioned this at the top of the show when we were talking about just these performances and how a bad day for Anthony Richardson has so far meant a bad day for Daniel Jones, and a good day for Daniel Jones has meant a good day for Anthony Richardson. They're just kind of trading days. They're not really giving themselves any lead or any gap when they're doing this competition. Like, there's no days where one stood out above the other. But what's been good is the last few days, it started really slow in the first week of training camp. But these last few days, they were both able to stack some strong performances on, I think, Monday and Tuesday of this week. So yeah, it's good to see it's ramping up, especially for Anthony Richardson, a guy who missed those OTAs, the mini camp. Maybe that is something that hurt him early on when he came into training camp because he didn't have some of those team reps. But as we've gotten on, it's gotten a little bit more consistent. Everybody's talking about the famous new wider base of Anthony Richardson's throwing style and how maybe that's leading to a little bit more consistency on these short and intermediate throws. And I think he is hitting on those short and intermediate throws with a little bit more consistency than he has in the past. I know during games, it's obvious when he misses those layups, those check downs, but I think even in training camp the past few years, that you've seen that pretty much every day where he's missing wide open guys, short and intermediate. But man, those explosive plays are just so good. You can't quit that. So yeah, I mean, it's good to see that consistency is maybe like it's good to see him stacking days, and we want to see that continue to happen and have that consistency continue to build on itself. I'm sure he's still going to miss some of those intermediate and short passes. I think it's just in a little bit in his nature to do that, but we're not asking for that Josh Allen jump in completion percentage and accuracy that everybody's been talking about. We're just asking for something better. It just needs to be a little bit better when we don't need him to jump up to 65% completion rate. But if he's hovering in the low 60s, I think that's just a massive upgrade. And the explosiveness that he gives you both in the run game and the deep passing game, I think is a worthwhile trade-off if that's what you're getting.
Yeah. And, look, this isn't to be negative, right? Because I've been a guy that has been quite negative at times about Anthony Richardson, and he's looking great in camp. I mean, if you watch the highlights, if you watch the updates, you keep track of guys that are boots on the ground like our own Jake Arthur, he's really hitting throws that he wasn't even attempting before. He was really trying to hum the football down the field. He was constantly just deep shot, deep shot, deep shot, deep shot. Now he's starting to allow things to unfold. He's taking what the defense gives him. And I'll tell you that's important because defenses are going to take away that deep ball. He starts connecting on some underneath throws. That's going to open up the deep ball again. So I think Chet mentioned something. He hasn't really found a certain favorite target. There's been practices where he's hit MPJ a lot. Tyler Warren, specifically in one practice, he really started hitting him a lot. Josh Downs hasn't necessarily had the best training camp, but you're not really worried about Josh Downs after leading the team in receptions last year. But he's also hit DJ Giddens on some easy, flat routes and stuff like that. So it's just encouraging, man, to see Richardson not forcing things. And in life, even if you tend to just slow down and take what life gives you, things tend to become more positive for you when you don't force things to happen. So it's encouraging. Now, one thing that really stood out that I found very fascinating, and Jake on our website covered this, but it was the interview that the Athletics' Zach Kiefer had with Chris Ballard. Ballard said, quote, he didn't have enough experience, both from a play standpoint, but also a professional standpoint of how to get ready. But when you take one high, there's an expectation. The pressure to play the kid is real, is what he said. And then Zach Kiefer actually said, and I quote, and this is valuable because Zach is as close to getting inside information as anybody. The GM, Ballard, caved to that pressure 2 years ago. He's vowed he won't moving forward. Ballard remains intent on playing the long game with the 23-year-old. Even if Richardson doesn't beat out Jones for the starting job this season, in other words, the Colts won't consider releasing or trading Richardson, even if his third season ends in disappointment. Okay, that's huge. That is a massive, monumental, mountainous type of development because we've heard everything from you got to give up on the kid. Right? You got to that fifth-year option. It's all about this season, which, hey, if they don't take his fifth-year option and he goes out there and kicks ass in year 4, they'll pay him, right? You're not going to just say, oh, no, we don't have a fifth-year option. He's not cheap anymore. But it says something that this team, even if Jones goes out there, wins the starting gig, Richardson doesn't win it, or Jones doesn't win it and Richardson looks bad and they throw Jones back in, you can tell that I think there's a combo here, Noah. Tell me what you think. I think the Colts thought that he would hit his stride sooner, okay? But they also had it in the back of their mind when they drafted him, like this could be a little rocky at first, and if it is, we're invested in this kid. We see all the positivity. There's so much there to mold that, look, man, I know that we've talked about this so much, but I have to say it. And I've criticized Richardson a lot. But if a guy that is his size, his potential, his athleticism, his arm talent mother of God, if this guy can even hit over 55, get close to 60% of his passes completed, I mean, he's a nightmare. He's really that's the kind of guy that as a defense, you have you have some sleepless nights potentially, game planning for a guy like this, especially the weapons that are around him.
Yeah, I just was reading this story before we went live that Drake put together, or that Jake put together. Sorry, on that Zach Kiefer article. But yeah, I think there's a lot to unpack there. It could sound like a nothing burger to some people, but I do think there's a lot to unpack. I definitely have my own thoughts about Chris Ballard like committing to the kid. I'm not sure that he's going to be in a scenario like if Anthony Richardson has a bad year this year, I'm not sure Chris Ballard's going to get the opportunity to be patient with him and hold on and hold out and hope that he gets some more experience and it works out for him. Because I think that it might be time to just move on from Chris Ballard, because we're talking about you not losing patience in a 23-year-old quarterback, but I think we're also talking about the Indianapolis Colts as an organization trying to keep patience with what would then at that point be a 10th year GM going into your 10th year without a whole bunch of results. I can't imagine the Colts have a ton of results if Anthony Richardson doesn't come out and have a great year and Daniel Jones ends up winning the starting job. Maybe if things drastically turn around for Daniel Jones, but what we've seen in training camp doesn't really seem like he's far and away above what Anthony Richardson's able to give you right now. So I hesitate to think that, okay, if you go with Daniel Jones, you make the wild card or whatever it is. Like I guess I can imagine a scenario where they would hold on to Chris Ballard if that was the case, but it seems less and less likely that would be a smart option. But yeah, just in terms of Chris Ballard's always preached as being patient with these people or with young players and just giving them a little bit more grace and a little bit more of a leash. And yeah, maybe he shouldn't have played him as early and he caved to that pressure. But I think a lot of that came down to, I think, frankly, was a little bit of a misevaluation from the Colts in terms of how ready Anthony Richardson was to be an NFL quarterback, whether that was physically, maybe they evaluated him just fine based on his physical tools. But at least I think from what we've seen and what we've heard off the field, maybe there was a little bit stronger belief that he was going to be able to do whatever it took necessary to be a franchise guy early on. And it seemed like that just wasn't the case. Whether that's the case now or not is something that we'll have to wait and see as the regular season rolls on and how he handles himself. But Anthony Richardson he is talking and looking and acting a little bit differently as far as everything that I've gathered throughout training camp. He's down about 10 pounds, adding a little bit more flexibility, focusing on that footwork, changing his diet, saying things in interviews like he's got to stop slacking off. He's got to do more and be better, which I think is frustrating to hear. A guy that you used the 4th overall pick for the first 2 years of his career as kind of admitting to slacking off and not taking things as seriously as he should. But yeah, I mean, there's time to turn things around. If you're Anthony Richardson, you can go out and you can do it this year. I think really realistically, despite the patience that Chris Ballard's preaching here with Anthony Richardson, I mean, yeah, he's preaching that on a hot seat of his own. So yeah, you're dealing with that. Anthony Richardson, I think, yeah, it's do it this year or do it for another team.
Yeah, and I highly encourage. I mean, obviously, we have our own podcast, but it's almost in a way the sibling of Locked On Colts with Jake Arthur and Zach Hicks. And there was an episode where it was just Jake, and he's got literally the eyes on the field. And he said about Daniel Jones, when it's 7-on-7s, he's Matt Stafford surgical. Okay, like he's incredible with his anticipation. He's got the ball out before the receiver's even breaking on the route. Absolutely chef's kiss type of stuff. Gets to 11-on-11s. The offensive line and defensive line are there. The pass rush is there.
Mm-hmm.
It's a lot different. He's a lot different of a quarterback. And I also like how you mentioned he has not created a significant gap, and I think that a lot of us anticipated that would happen. So it's going to be a battle, folks. But I will say this. The Colts, if it's neck and neck, or I dare say, I know that Steichen's job is on the line. I know Ballard's job is on the line. But if Richardson is even a minuscule amount behind Jones, I just think the Colts want him to start. I really do. I think they want Richardson to pan out, and you got to get him out there. Okay, he's only played 15 out of 34 games. Yeah. So continue to watch this quarterback competition because the entire future of this freaking team depends on that success from under center. So, go ahead.
It kind of sounds like to me Shane Steichen is a little bit more willing to play Daniel Jones, and Chris Ballard's more on this Anthony Richardson train. But Chris Ballard's also the same guy that's preaching patience with Anthony Richardson. So I don't know. I think it's ultimately, I think Chris Ballard's not the guy that would step in and tell Shane Steichen to start Anthony Richardson because that's what he thinks is right. I think he's going to defer to his coaches on that. I think he's been in the past at least very hands off in terms of the lineups and playing time and things like that. But yeah, it seems to me, I think Shane Steichen would be okay with either, but I do think of the two, Shane Steichen seems a little bit more open to Daniel Jones. But I think even then you still have to create at least some sort of a gap if you're Daniel Jones. And I think you had that opportunity while Anthony Richardson was missing time this offseason, but it seems like at this point, at least, he hasn't taken enough advantage of that to really create a sizable gap in the competition.
Yeah, so continue to watch that, folks, because that's gonna take over everything continuously, regardless of what else happens with the Colts. So this next one, not really too surprising. It's actually nothing but encouraging, and you've seen nothing but professionalism when the camera's in this dude's face, and other guys are walking through the woods, on that blue tarp or blue carpet or whatever to get to the training camp field. You see guys like Richardson, like celebrating or like, trying to make people laugh in front of the camera. This man literally just puts his head down, and all he is football all the time. He's not funny, which is not a bad thing, but it's Tyler Warren. So Tyler Warren, while he might not be the most entertaining guy, the dude is balling out. He's looking the role. He's looking every bit of a tight end one. There's been a couple practices where he's just been a safety blanket. He's made some big catches. Honestly, Noah, there's really not much to say here other than you drafted him to do this, right? Like you drafted him 14th overall, which I know Loveland went 10th, but then Warren went 14th. I can't remember the last time I saw two tight ends go in the first round like that. But tell me a little bit about what you think, because he's looking like he could potentially have a pretty impactful rookie year. Push the brakes because it is a run-first offense, but it's very encouraging because he's fitting in with this offense pretty nicely.
Yeah, you mentioned the demeanor. It reminds me a little bit like he's the Quentin Nelson of the skill group in terms of just no nonsense, not even looking at the camera in those things. He's not going to give you a good interview. He's not going to be really any of that. Just hopefully he gets to that Quentin Nelson level, right? Which is an incredibly high bar to reach if he ends up being an all-pro. But yeah, I mean, we're talking year one, just get out there and show yourself as a valuable safety blanket, show yourself as someone who can control the middle of the field, like Shane Steichen and Chris Ballard mentioned so often in their interviews, as somebody that they needed to go out and find somebody who could control the middle of the field. Hopefully Tyler Warren can be that. And then this versatility, I use the word versatility there because they've been lining him up as fullback in a couple of times, taking some handoffs from Daniel Jones, Anthony Richardson in some individual settings. So just getting him used to playing multiple spots on the offense and really adding an extra wrinkle to the playbook, giving Shane Steichen a little bit more options in terms of things that he can call, especially I think on short yardage. You're talking third and short, fourth and short, goal line situations. Is some way you can move Tyler Warren around, get him in the backfield, get him kind of as a wing, put him in motion. I think they've got all these things planned for him, and I'm just really excited to see kind of how it works out. And I think we're going to really have to wait until the regular season. I bet we're not going to get a ton of taste of that during the preseason. I bet Shane Steichen's not going to dip into his bag too much in terms of creative play calling in these key situations. Sure, they're going to rep it a lot in training camp, I'm sure. But yeah, when we get to those preseason games and that film's available for all NFL teams, they're probably going to want to hide a little bit of that. So yeah, just excited to see him getting some of those fullback handoffs and seeing him just really acclimate to this offense in a way that rookies generally don't.
So a couple things here. Number one, DOS 719. Yes, he has actually played fullback in training camp practice. There's been some sets where he lines up at tight end and you see like the leg kick out from the quarterback and he just drops right back on the right side and plays fullback. Tyler Warren, is going to be implemented to create issues for the defense on the fly. They're going to have to make changes, and they're going to have to switch some guys, and he's going to be a mismatch for pretty much anybody that's got him. So that's not a surprise. But yes, he has played fullback. This one's for you, Noah. If the Colts don't do so well halfway through the season, will Carly Ursay-Gordon or Kalen Jackson or Casey Foyt, will they fire Ballard or Steichen mid-season? I'll just start.
Yeah.
I think it was shocking when it happened to Frank Reich.
Mm-hmm.
Nobody. Jim Irsay had never done that, right? What do you think the Irsay sisters would do? Do you think that let's say that week 9 rolls around and the Colts are 2-6, dare I say 1-7? Yeah. What do you think will happen? Do you think that they'll change the dynamic? Because that really throws a team into a tailspin when you do that.
Yeah, I think if we get to that point halfway through the season, the Colts are 1-7. I think that's probably going to be what a lot of Colts fans are calling for, just because of the patience that the Colts organization has given Chris Ballard. And I don't think that would be the case with Carly. You can always be wrong. You don't know how new ownership's going to handle those things. But I mean, they've said pretty publicly that every decision they make is going to be with their dad, Jim Irsay, in mind. That was not something that Jim Irsay really did. He did that for Frank Reich that one year just because I don't know if he had the Jeff Saturday thing up his sleeve and he was trying to look for any excuse to get Jeff Saturday into the organization. But I mean, we all saw how that went, right? And I think Carly and the other Irsay sisters were very much in the front seat when they were watching that unfold and seeing how that happened. So I don't think that that's a route that they would take based on experience that has happened. And I just think experience throughout the NFL, I don't think that's necessarily a productive thing to do. I don't know who you have to have somebody really on your staff that you're genuinely trying to evaluate for a position if you're trying to do that. So maybe if you fire Chris Ballard halfway through the season, I mean, GM's a lot different halfway through the season because there's not really a ton a GM can do halfway through a season. If you bring a new guy in, I don't know how much he can turn things around to really make the results change. Head coach is where that conversation is, and I think there's probably a little bit more patience for Shane Steichen than there is for Chris Ballard at this point. And I don't really think there's anybody on your staff that you're eyeing for a potential head coach position. If you were to decide to move on from Shane Steichen in the future, are you really eyeing Jim Bob Cooter or whoever it is, Lou Anarumo, for a head coaching role that you would throw in there as interim head coach? I think to make that worthwhile as a move, I think you really have to have somebody on your roster or on your coaching staff already that you're considering for that. And outside of, I don't know if there's a long shot for Reggie Wayne, just trying to get him some more experience. I mean, if it's going to be done in the middle of the season, then they're going to hire a former Colts player, right? Just based off of past precedent. So yeah, I don't envision that happening. Despite even if they do end up going around 1-7 about halfway through the season.
Yeah. So in short, okay, like I think if they're 1-7, 2-6, I think you don't tank on purpose. Yeah. Okay. But you're looking at that like, all right, let's finish out this disaster. Okay. Let's get a high draft pick. Like that's what you're doing. And then you can evaluate that after the season. But I'm telling you, when a team, even if they suck, they're absolutely dreadful. When you fire a coach or a GM in the middle of the season, it really does send shockwaves through a locker room. It did when Frank Reich was canned. So, I mean, there were even some players that voiced that they were upset. You had a guy like Nick Sirianni shouting at the crowd, "That was for Frank." Like it was just dramatic as hell. Absolute ridiculous stuff came from that. So I think if you're going to fire someone mid-season, you better be ready for the fallout.
Yeah, even before they fired Frank Reich, it was Marcus Brady, offensive coordinator, they had to have a scapegoat. So there were some signs. Maybe if we get to week 6, 7 and Jim Bob Cooter's out the door, maybe then your eyes open up a little bit wider and see that maybe some changes are coming. But yeah, if a domino is going to fall, I don't think Shane Steichen or Chris Ballard are going to be the first ones.
Yeah, so keep an eye on that. If they start to kind of fall apart in the season, I mean, like Noah said, don't be surprised if you start to see components, pieces of who Shane Steichen hired or Anarumo hired or Ballard put confidence in. If they start falling, I mean, those two could be soon. This next one, very newsy, but it's because of the injuries. The Colts signed Trey Herndon and Duke Shelley, a couple of guys who have bounced around the league. They've been
Yeah.
really more backup, step pieces, rotational guys. This is merely because they want to have guys in camp, I think, right now. Are Trey Herndon and Duke Shelley going to make the roster? Who knows? I think that if Jalen Jones and Juju Brents can return, you might be looking at practice squad or releases. Because, I mean, you see in the offseason, man, you got guys who get released, signed, released, signed. It happens all the time. Look at Spencer Schrader last year. So tell me a little bit about this. I mean, neither guy is really that impactful. Neither guy's really done much in their NFL career, but it does mean something, that the Colts went right out and they signed 2 cornerbacks.
Yeah. Obviously, you have 2 guys go down in the cornerback room. Even though you didn't make roster moves to put either of them on PUP, you still want to have bodies who are able to keep that rotation at least a little bit similar when you're going in through these training camp practices. It's a long training camp. It's a long preseason. So you have to have these bodies. I do think it was interesting. Trey Herndon and Duke Shelley, both guys who spent some time with the Giants practice squad under new DB coach Jerome Henderson last year. So they're bringing in guys who are familiar with this coaching staff already, like they did with Josh Tupou, the defensive tackle who spent time with Lou Anarumo in the past. So they're bringing in these veteran guys who know the system. There's not going to be a lot of coaching up required to get them acclimated so they can really hit the ground running and be in that rotation from day one when they get in here. Duke Shelley, probably a guy who's going to exclusively play on the inside. And Trey Herndon, I think mostly throughout his NFL career has also been an inside guy, but I also think has the versatility to bump outside, which is a little bit interesting because it's 2 outside guys that went down in Juju Brents and Jalen Jones. But I think you're in that position now where Justin Wally is going to be an outside guy specifically until you get Jalen Jones and Juju Brents back. So really in that nickel spot, you need some people who can take some of those snaps. Duke Shelley, Trey Herndon. I saw they worked out Chris Lamons also today, former Colts backup nickel from last season. So, I mean, yeah, they're really eyeing adding some bodies to this cornerback room just because, I mean, it seemed really deep when you came in here and you had this 3-way competition for an outside corner spot. But when 2 of those 3 guys go down, then your depth really starts to get tested. And you've got a rookie 3rd-round pick starting on the outside. And then your next man up is Sam Womack and Corey Ballantyne. And the depth all of a sudden isn't as great as you had hoped when you went into the season. Or went into training camp. So yeah, it makes sense to bring in these guys.
Yeah, and hey, this is important because you have to keep training camp moving.
Yep.
Like you can't just say, oh well, let's just wait. So if anybody's out there thinking that Trey Herndon and Duke Shelley are the replacements potentially for guys like Juju Brents and Jalen Jones, they're not even in the same conversation as either one of those guys, even if Juju Brents has hardly played. So I think that it's telling. It's good that the Colts did this quickly. So when I go there on Saturday, you're probably going to see these guys out there, but don't expect, ladies and gentlemen, to see Jalen Jones and Juju Brents thrust out there so they can get experience. They've played enough. So you need to slowly get them out there, make 100% sure with those lower extremity injuries that they're ready. So these signings made a lot of sense. So
yeah, and this also probably, I don't know if we have a banner pulled up for this one, but it also pulls up to another roster move that the Colts made was putting David Long Jr. On IR also, which is another cornerback in that room, which was one of the subsequent moves that came as a result of this. But yeah, you're missing Jalen Jones, you're missing Juju Brents, and then you're also missing another depth piece, a rotational piece. So yeah, it makes sense to have those bodies in there at corner and to continue to work out other corners like the Colts currently are.
Yeah, we'll go ahead and cover this one too, because we've got a couple others here that we want to hit, and there's only 7 minutes left. But they released Albert O, tight end, and that just pretty much tells you that they really have a lot of confidence in Tyler Warren. I think that you're going to see Mo. I mean, I would not be shocked, Noah, if they have 4 tight ends. Man, I really wouldn't. I think that you're looking at Warren, Alec Cox, Ogletree, and Mallory. That sounds like your 4 tight ends. So
yeah, you're going to have to make some hard cuts. I thought the Albert O release was interesting because I think you really only have Tyler Warren and Will Mallory right now who can play that kind of move, FY tight end or FH tight end, whatever you want to call it in this scheme. But yeah, it's just Tyler Warren and Will Mallory. Otherwise, you're kind of shoehorning Jelani Woods in there. Sean McKeon's not really a guy that's going to do that for you. Ogletree and Mo Alley Cox are not your move around guys. So yeah, it's just kind of, he was really that third man behind there. So maybe just the emergence of, maybe not emergence, but I guess a little bit of consistency that you're seeing from Will Mallory makes you feel a little bit comfortable. Albert O, I think, is a talented player, but in every training camp, you have to have an 89th and 90th best player on your roster. And when you have injuries go on throughout training camp, you have to make room for some people to fill in those gaps. And unfortunately, Albert O was that guy in this situation.
Yeah, and so those are the prominent like news and rumors. But again, these all happened this week. So, I mean, the Colts have had to kind of pivot and move along with all these updates and these happenstances. So this next one is really interesting, but it's mostly because of injuries. And that's that Zack Moss became a free agent. Look, I vividly remember Zack Moss's 2023 campaign. Okay, especially that Baltimore Ravens win in Baltimore where he took like 30 carries. Dude, he had like 188 yards. When he was starting in place of Jonathan Taylor, he was a top 5 ranked running back as far as yards per carry, yards overall. Zack Moss was a dog in 2023 for the Colts. Even when Taylor came back, he still helped run the offense in the backfield when Taylor was slowly integrated back into it after his ankle injury. Of course, the Bengals, he was really rough with the Bengals. You've got Chase Brown, the shiny toy that they're going to that they want to give all the snaps they can to. I wrote this breaking news piece. Do you think that if the Colts want more running back depth, they got Goodson, they got Salvon Ahmed behind Taylor, Giddens, and Herbert. Do you think that they even take a shot at Zack Moss? Because right now I think he's so injury riddled. Yeah. I don't think they're even looking at him, unfortunately.
Yeah, let's throw out Ulysses Bentley also there. I feel like every show we have somebody in the chat asking about Ulysses Bentley.
UDFA.
Yeah. Yep. Ulysses Bentley comes up in the chat every episode we do. He's still cooking in there as much as an undrafted free agent running back can. Like, he's not going to get a ton of reps when you've got these other guys ahead of him, but he's in the mix. Zack Moss is an interesting discussion you have, because before this offseason, before they went out and signed DJ Giddens, before they drafted Giddens, before they signed Khalil Herbert, those end of the year press conferences, it was, I think Chris Ballard and Shane Steichen both like having instances where they're talking about their running back group and how they disappointed in Trey Sermon and Goodson last year. And it almost seemed like they were all sighing a little bit, being like, oh, we miss Zack Moss. We wish we had somebody. Yeah. Yeah, I guess somebody who hadn't been on the team in a calendar year. He went out and mentioned, how much they missed Zack Moss and how much of an impact he had while he was a free agent. So certainly there's a lot of love and respect there from the Colts for Zack Moss. But also he wasn't a free agent when they made these moves. He wasn't dealing with that injury. So Khalil Herbert, DJ Giddens, they brought in, so they have some capable guys back there behind Jonathan Taylor, and they've got a guy in Giddens who they probably want to get on the field and get some snaps and get some experience and really see what he can do. I think they love Zack Moss. If he wasn't dealing with the neck injury that Zack Moss is dealing with, I think it would be in play. But also, I think if he wasn't dealing with the neck injury, I think he'd still be a Bengal, or there would be a lot more interest from him around the league in a much higher role than what the Colts would probably be offering him. So yeah, I don't think that a reunion is necessarily likely, just because of the injury and the additions that the Colts made to the running back room. But definitely, I love thinking about that conference that Chris Ballard had, just surrounded by a scrum of reporters talking about his running back room and how he just missed Zack Moss and wished that he was there last season.
It's actually, that was probably one of the few times, because Chris Ballard, say what you want about him, when the media, especially the indie media, when they are in front of him, that dude is not only very honest, not only does he answer questions more than a normal GM does, but he's hilarious. There's times where he's absolutely hilarious, and you're sitting there inside your head, you don't want to smile and laugh at him while you're there. There's been times where God, man, he's really funny. And in that case, he wasn't trying to be funny, but yeah, he's like, oh, I just wish we had a Zack Moss. He's just like, you could tell how much he missed Zack Moss's presence in that running back room. But yeah, this one sucks because it's mostly injuries. It's that he's not Chase Brown. They gave him a chance to be that guy in Cincinnati. He just, 3.3 yards per carry. You're not going to make a roster when you're doing that.
Yeah.
So best of luck to Zack Moss. He's literally, let me see here. How old is this guy? He is 27. Yeah. So he has a lot of football potentially ahead of him. Of course, he got traded to the Colts for Nyheim Hines. So this last one just happened right before the show, and we got to bring it up. Scary Terry requests a trade from the Washington Commanders. Now, remember, people, just because you request a trade like Jonathan Taylor did, none of that matters when it's initially said. Yeah. This could be leverage. It could be that his agent told him, hey, go request a trade. Maybe the Commanders are like, hey, you know what? Go out there and see what you can find. Here's our contract offer. Cool. And then from there on, anything can happen. But don't expect, I know it sucks because he's a native.
Yeah.
The Colts are not going to trade for, they're just not going to do it. They have too much talent. Where are you going to put the guy, right? Like, where are you going to put him? So
yeah, I'm surprised that it hadn't come up in the chat just because he is an Indianapolis native and Marvin Harrison was his favorite receiver growing up, and Colts fans have liked him since he came out of Ohio State. There's been a lot of talks for Colts fans wanting the Colts to trade for Terry McLaurin even before this, so I figured this was just going to add a ton of fuel to the fire of him formally requesting a trade from the Commanders. But yeah, you're right. I think the Colts are already in a situation at wide receiver where they're trying to gauge and figure out how they're going to keep guys that they want to keep and feel like they might have to move on from somebody. You can't keep Alec Pierce, Josh Downs, and Michael Pittman all on $20 million plus a year deals when Pierce and Downs deals are due and they come up. I feel like if you go out and you get a guy like Terry McLaurin, then you're trying to find a new home for Michael Pittman. There's a lot of moving parts that would have to happen to accommodate a guy like Terry McLaurin on your roster. And also somebody who's going to want a new deal. That's the crux of this trade request, is somebody who's looking to get paid like the top of the market at receiver, which I think he deserves. But maybe the Colts aren't really in that situation if they've got a pending guy and Alec Pierce and Josh Downs on their deals, $20 million a year right now for Michael Pittman. They're not really in a situation where you could do that. And then I think the other conversation that you have to have on top of it is, yes, the Irsays gave their blessing to Chris Ballard to give that extension to Bernhard Raimann. Are they going to feel the same way about giving up future draft assets if they don't know if he's going to be the GM going forward? I'm not sure about that. So I think there's multiple ways why it can't work, but also just fun to think about.
Yeah, Colts fans, if it helps you have some really awesome dreams about what Terry McLaurin could do in a Colts uniform tonight, awesome, have those dreams, but there's no way in hell, because, just to put a bow on it, now you've got, they love Ashton Doolin. Yeah. He is not going anywhere. You're talking about a former all-pro special teamer. Anthony Gould is now showing out as a potential slot backup in camp. All right. Alec Pierce has been arguably the most impactful receiver in camp. Josh Downs led the team in receptions last year, and Michael Pittman, who's the go-to guy, doesn't have a back problem anymore. Yeah. Like Noah said, they're trying to figure out how are we supposed to get all of these guys touches on the field. So it's not happening. The Colts are like 19th in salary cap.
Yeah, and plus Daniel Jones already has number 17. You don't even have a jersey number to give him.
There you go. Yeah, Daniel Jones has that stuff on lock. So, but yeah, guys, that's our show. We do have a couple other comments in the chat here, but we're already running over. So thank you so much, everybody, for joining. Just to put to conclude here. This is such an entertaining training camp. There's so much going on. Not all of it's good, clearly, as we covered, but keep an eye on nothing more than that quarterback development, because that is where whatever happens there and whatever subsequently the next starter does with his opportunity it's going to shape where this franchise goes, man. So keep an eye on that. But like the Horseshoe Huddle on Facebook, follow Indianapolis Colts on SI.com to see all of our written work and all of our updates, especially guys like myself, Jake Arthur, Zach Hicks. We're going to be Andrew Moore. We're going to be boots on the ground there at training camp to give you all the coverage. On X, we have a fantastically difficult tag to type in, but it's Colts on _SI. Subscribe to Horseshoe Huddle on YouTube. Click the bell to turn on all those notifications. And if you want to listen to the Horseshoe Huddle podcast, no problem. Noah has you covered on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and wherever else you listen. So, guys, we will be right back here on Monday to give you more Colts training camp updates. We've got, I think they were off yesterday, but it's just going to keep on coming. I'll be there on Saturday. I'll also be there on Sunday, August 10th for their 4 p.m. practice. But, man, the drama won't stop until they name a starting quarterback, and get ready because it still won't stop even after they name a starting quarterback. So I hope you all have a wonderful week. Have a great weekend, and we will be seeing you all again early next week. Take care.